Alright, so today and tomorrow what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on an activity that's going to have us look at the home front and gearing up for World War II and what we're going to need to do to win this thing. Make no mistake, Germany, Japan are not afraid of our soldiers. They aren't. That's not going to scare them. Our soldiers aren't necessarily going to scare them. They will fight them. I mean, both of those other countries have been at war much longer than we have. Alright, the Japanese believe they have the samurai spirit. Death before dishonor, death before surrender. So fighting the U.S. soldier isn't going to be what wins this war. What is going to win the war is the support from home and making sure everybody is doing their bit to end the Axis. And this is very evident as soon as the Japanese are going to attack Pearl Harbor. The Admiral Yamamoto, who is going to be the commander of the entire Japanese Navy, says that he can run wild for 6 months, but after that he has no illusions of victory. He knows he's going to lose this war, mainly because we're an industrialized nation, and if everybody commits to this war, like people in Europe have, like the British have, if we commit that same amount, there's no way Japan is going to defeat us. So what you're going to be doing, if I can get one of these cards, is you should by now have two cards, two of these. It should be different, so if you have the same one, change it up. Find somebody to trade with or get a different card, because I want you to have an option. What I want you to do is to take a look at these people, and none of these people can enlist in the army. That's the first thing I want to put out there. You've got to figure out some way of getting them to help out in the war without enlisting, because we're going to be making propaganda posters, and an enlistment poster is just way too easy of a concept. How do we defeat the Axis? Well, we shoot them. Alright, well, how does somebody who's 13 defeat the Axis? That's something different. He's not going to be able to enlist in the army, but he is going to play a pivotal part in the war. Like I mentioned, Japan, Germany aren't necessarily afraid of our soldiers. They've got soldiers too. What they are afraid of is us committing to this war and doing everything we can to winning it. Alright, so you have your card. You have your two people. I want you to take a look at their backstories, and I want you to decide which one you want to focus on for this activity. Alright, so once you have decided, sorry if it jumped around, I had somebody come in. But once you've figured out which person that you want to do this assignment on, you're going to have to assess their ability, to help out with the war effort in different ways. So the only way we're going to win this war is if everybody pulls their weight. That includes somebody who's 13 years old. It includes somebody who has a heart murmur or flat feet, or who just doesn't want to fight but still wants to make sure we defeat the Axis, or somebody who's 47 years old, past it, lost a step, can't actually fight but still wants to help out. Alright, so you got to assess their ability to help out in these different ways. So Hans Hugel, we're going to take him for example. He is male, he's 13, right? He's got some experiences, so we'll read his experiences. Hans is the son of a German immigrant in Minnesota. He owns a farm. He enjoys hunting, or he doesn't own it. His family owns it. He enjoys hunting and fishing. His mind races with the excitement of becoming a soldier if the war is still being fought when he gets older, but that is at least still 3 years away. But with the 3 years that he has, what can he do? Well, he hunts, he fishes, so he can help out by building a Liberty Garden, or either doing more with less and making sure that they don't eat as much meat, because that's going to be a rationed good, and helping out in that sense. All right, hunting for his family is going to cut down on their consumption of farmed meat, which is going to be sent over to our soldiers, so he can help out with obeying ration limits by helping bring in some deer or fishing fish. Can he buy a Liberty Bond? Maybe. Maybe he could possibly do that. Could he build a Liberty Garden? Well, his family's got a farm. They've got extra land. He may be more helping out with the actual farm, because those goods are going directly to the soldiers. So yes and no. It's dependent. Helping out with the civil defense. He's in Minnesota. Alright, so I gotta explain what the civil defense is. because the other ones we've already had in World War One and we know a lot about. What the civil defense is, these are going to be the eyes and ears of the American home front. Our soldiers are going to be across the world. Well, what if Japan is going to attack Hawaii again? We need somebody to be able to warn the people of Hawaii to get into bomb shelters or get to a safe place. That will be able to radio to the Army saying, hey, we've got problems here. Same thing in California, same thing on the East Coast. Other things that the civil defense will do is make sure that people are obeying limits, obeying the ration limits. They'll also go around at night, especially on the coastline. The big thing is that we don't want to give the Germans a target at night. So we're going to have lights that are going to be off. Right? You can't allow any light to emit from your house, because there could be German submarines, there could be German ships off of our shores and are waiting for something to shell. And if they can see large amounts of lights, they know that's a large area of people there and they could hit us and hurt us. So what we do is we get blackout curtains that would block all light coming in but also all light going out. We would board up windows. We make sure that if you were going out at night that you had the lights turned off in that part of the house so that it didn't emit and didn't tip off the Germans. The civil defense would go around and make sure the people were doing that, to make sure and check, no light getting out of your house. Other things they would do, radio. They would be able to radio important information to civilians during emergencies. So like a hurricane hits, we're not going to be able to rely on the National Guard, so the civil defense is going to have to take up the issue there. Radio, and if they see enemy planes flying by, right, so they're going to be trained. What does a Japanese Zero look like? What does a German Stuka? What does a German submarine look like? Right, so that they can radio to people to help out. Excuse me. Organizing, helping with scrap drives, tin, steel, rubber, newspaper, kitchen fats. All these things are going to be collected during the war to help out. Tin, steel can be used in weapons, and there's a lot of it lying around. There's a lot of tin cans, steel cans for food containers. They'll be collected and be given over to the Army so that they can get to the factories and be created into a knife or a bullet or something like that. The auxiliary services, especially if you have a woman. If you have a male person, the answer here is going to be no. Right. You can't join a women's auxiliary service if you're male. Right. But if you were a female in kind of the 16 to 25-ish age, you could join the military. You know, you wouldn't be on frontline duty, you would be in a different unit and you would have different tasks that you were to complete. But you could join. These were emergency women's auxiliary units to be used to fight as a last resort, but they are going to have important jobs during the war. So if you're in WAC, let me pull up the picture. I have the, let's see. Yeah. Alright, if you're a WAC, alright, you were going to join the Army. And when you were joined with the Army, this is Army Auxiliary Corps. Right? So WAC, and sometimes they were just called WAC, WAC. You would be in jobs like nurses, you would be in jobs like radiographer, sending messages from one place to the other. You would be typing up, the unfortunate thing, you'd be typing up messages for soldiers who have died or have been injured. You'd be typing those messages and sending them to their family. You could also be in charge of driving trucks. Right? A lot of these plants that are making the tanks, that are making the guns and things, we've got to get those to ports. And getting them to ports and putting them onto the boats to get them over to the Pacific and get them over to Europe. All the men are in the regular units and are fighting. So women are going to have to take up more of the responsibility to getting those things to where they need to go. The Army Air Corps one, You'd be flying bombers. You wouldn't be on missions, but what happened? These bombers are being made in places like Seattle, but they need to get to bases in California to then be flown to the theater, right? So be flown to Hawaii, or they need to be flown to New York so that they can then be flown by Army pilots to Europe. So they are going to be delivering newly created bombers and newly created planes to where they need to go, and they're going to be flying them there. So they're going to be training these women as pilots. So if you're a woman who's mechanically gifted, who can help out, she's probably going to be needed in the Women's Air Corps or the WAC or the Waves as well. But they are also, one other thing I want to point out, they are trained as soldiers. They have to maintain a high level of fitness just like any men in the service, and they are going to be trained with weapons. Here you have 22 training for the ladies in the Waves, which is the Naval Women's Auxiliary Force. So think about that if you have a lady who's trying to figure out how to help us defeat the Axis. War production factory, just like you had in World War I, usually these are going to be women who do not have children. Usually mothers weren't necessarily Rosie the Riveters. Usually they were either unmarried women, or if they were married, they didn't have children, or else they would be home taking care of the children. So keep that in mind if you're talking about somebody working in a war production factory. If it's a woman, it has to kind of fall into that schedule. Generally, do more with less. Right? You gotta wear it out. You got to use it until it breaks. You gotta wear tight pants. Right? Using less material is going to save material for the troops. And this is going to lead in one of the controversial things in World War II. In LA, there's going to be something called the Zoot Suit riots. The Zoot Suits were these suits that were really baggy, right? Had so much material in them. They were very popular in the Mexican American community in LA and the Mexican migrant community that would come up from Mexico. But they were seen as unpatriotic because you're using the material unwisely if we're going to be defeating Germany, if we're going to be defeating Japan. So doing less with doing more with less, right? Wearing tighter clothes, ill-fitting clothes, clothes with holes in it. Trying to figure out how to have a birthday party when you don't have sugar for the cake, or you're definitely not going on vacations. Trying to get around those things like that. Fixing stuff that you wouldn't normally fix, that you may throw away. Now you're trying to fix those things. Okay? Now what you want to do after you have filled this out, because you need to fill this out and you need to explain why you think that Hans Hugel can help out really well with obeying the ration limits or whatever he's doing. After you complete this, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating a propaganda poster. Actually, you're going to be creating two. So remember, you're creating two. With those propaganda posters, I need to see a big slogan, catchy slogan. If you ride alone, excuse me. If you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. That's a catchy slogan. After that, you need to have a picture that not only shows what's going on with the way they can help out with the war, but how it's connecting to defeat as the bell goes off, how it is defeating the Axis. So you need to show that buying Liberty bonds is going to lead to us defeating Nazi Germany. Helping us with the civil defense is going to help us beat Germany. All right. And then the last thing I need for you to do is underneath it, you need to have a paragraph explaining how that connects, how helping out with the civil defense is going to, how you can join the civil defense, and why is that going to matter? Why is the civil defense going to help us win this war? All right, good luck.